Hello and welcome to the Procurement Podcast, brought to you by BizClick and our sponsors for this series, Amazon Business. This is your go-to podcast for all things procurement. If you're ready to move from being a tactical buyer to a strategic leader, you're in the right place. Tune in and together we can build a better bottom line. I'm Aaron McMillan, editor of Procurement Magazine and your host for this podcast series.
Hi and welcome back to the Procurement Magazine podcast, coming to you from Chicago at the Procurement and Supply Chain Live US Summit. I am delighted today to be joined by a real kind of powerhouse in the procurement world. He's got a career spanning from the US State of Department in Singapore to the headquarters of Mars and Kraft Heinz. He's kind of mastered the art of the global perspective, which is so vital today for procurement to find success. I'm delighted to be joined by Dennis Evashenk. Dennis, hi, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Oh, amazing. So when you were growing up, did you kind of ever picture yourself to be at these kind of procurement conferences, working all over the world, kind of driving, procurement functions? Like, tell me a little bit about your childhood and how you kind of ended up in a role like this.
Yeah, so definitely never thought about procurement, knew what it was. I grew up in a family business with my grandmother, so I learned a lot about business very early on. And that was a huge asset to have going into business school and going to university when I studied business. I didn't know what procurement was, even at the time when I was in university and studying. My major was in business management, and I had a minor in international business and a minor in hospitality leadership and event management. Nothing to do with procurement whatsoever. And I was working at a nonprofit here in Chicago, and it was a fast-growing nonprofit. And when I joined, I was working part-time with the organization as an employee while I was going to school. And we realized that we needed to set some things in place overnight because it was growing so quickly. What those things were, we didn't know what that was called. I didn't know what that was called. It ended up being procurement. And so that's how I learned procurement, was while I was working at a nonprofit. And there was a need for looking at value and really leveraging the spend that the organization had.
What was it when you were kind of discovering it? What was it about procurement that you liked so much and kind of kept you around in the industry for so long?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I definitely have seen a lot of different parts of procurement. I've seen manufacturing, I've seen indirect procurement, I've seen direct procurement, I've seen transformation. And for me, it's about no day being the same. I think that's what's really kept me around, and connecting the people and connecting the dots. I think that's what I've heard us be told that we do that well, typically in procurement, in a very successful procurement organization, and I enjoy doing that. So that's definitely part of what keeps me in the procurement space.
What's your favorite part of the job? What do you like delivering most on? What kind of gives you the most sense of pride?
So I would say the strategy, M&A, and a mixture of some of that transformation. I'm all about process improvement and driving efficiency. I think one of the things that a lot of people don't always think about while driving that efficiency is you need to be liked by your stakeholders. You need to build those relationships. So you can drive the most efficient process in procurement, but if you don't have the buy-in from your stakeholders and you're not liked by your stakeholders, it's not going to go very far. So I always keep that in mind when I'm designing or developing a strategy.
Yeah, from kind of having conversations with you, it's clear that relationship ability you've got is such a strong skill. You're very personable, can kind of get on board with someone straight away. Is that something about meeting new people and building those relationships, something for you that you like so much that kind of keeps you kind of going from transformation to transformation because you've led so many of them?
It does, yes. There's always a new person around the corner. There's always a new thing to learn. I remember back to the time when I was looking at categories, and this was not a category that I ever worked in before, and I saw a little drop-down list in a large company, and it was for powdered blood. And I was like, I didn't know that was a category of procurement, but I learned something new today. We're very used to the categories of IT and services and workplace and things of that nature, but we're not always used to some of those more unique categories, such as powdered blood. So I think it keeps me learning, it keeps me growing, and I'm always discovering new things.
Have you ever, I imagine you're particularly great at kind of sourcing things for the companies you work for. Is there anything that you've kind of been sourced for yourself personally? Like I always kind of ask people if they've used their skills, so perhaps if they've gone away on like a holiday or a trip and they've had a particular kind of drink while over there and they've kind of gone about trying to bring that back home with them or getting it back. Have you kind of used that to kind of source stuff for you?
I certainly have. And it's funny you mentioned that because I had a friend message me last night asking about where to purchase a particular fan and air purifier for their home. So even people around me see those skills in me and are always curious where I'm buying things or how I'm procuring things for myself.
So nice that you get to be that for your friends and family as well. I imagine not many big purchases go by in their lives without consulting you at least. Great.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks so much for exploring that kind of more personal side with me. I was wondering, you've been in and around procurement for a number of years. So what are you kind of seeing now as the kind of the major new issues that people are facing in the procurement space in 2026?
Yeah, so I think I have to approach the hot topic of AI, right? It's there, it's here. It's everywhere, right? And I think we need to really look at AI as a tool to assist. People were afraid at the beginning of it eliminating jobs, but I think it really can supplement some of those jobs. I would also say it's important, the goals really today should be to create efficiencies in procurement and be liked. I think that is the important part, to get the entire company to follow you as procurement and not look at procurement as a barrier, but to truly look at procurement as a partner. I think those are two things, the efficiency portion and the being liked, that are challenges today in many environments, but very important to put as a top goal.
This podcast is in partnership with Amazon Business. Amazon Business is your one-stop destination for everything your organization needs. Think of it as the Amazon you already know and love, but specifically re-engineered for the way you work. Amazon Business gives you access to business-only pricing on millions of items and quantity discounts that scale with your growth. It's about spending less time bogged down in those manual tasks and more time on what really matters. So head over to Amazon Business and make the power of Amazon work for you.
I think a lot of people would perhaps, who work in procurement, kind of talk about that label of being a barrier, of being the kind of the people who say no, the people who kind of put a stop to things. So, maybe procurement has a bit of a brand problem, an image problem. How do we go about kind of sorting that out? What do you think?
So I think it depends on the culture of the organization, the geography you're in. So there's not a one-size-fits-all answer. Always be adaptable and flexible. I think that's most important. But also you have to take a step back and think about the company culture as a whole. Is it coming from a startup vibe, or is it a enterprise that's existed for 100 plus years with a very large staff and has had a very large staff for a long time in a procurement organization? Or is this a completely new idea and maybe even a foreign concept to these individuals? They haven't worked with someone in that capacity before. I think those are some things to consider as you want to build those relationships and create a name for procurement that is the partner and not the barrier.
You've worked all over the world. Is that something you see kind of everywhere, wherever you've worked, that procurement has that kind of, that image, that kind of tag to it? Or is there places in the world where perhaps companies that you've worked for, but maybe slightly smaller, do not have that kind of problem?
Yeah, so I think, again, going back to the culture, it really depends on the culture at the company and also at in the geography that you're in. I think those are two big parts to it. I have seen where procurement is looked at as a check the box exercise, and I've seen where procurement is looked at as a partner, and I've also seen procurement looked at as a top-down approach, and these are the people that tell me what I can buy, right? And that can be carried culturally in some places. And depending on the executives and the culture of that company, it really can change the look and feel of how a stakeholder may be interacting with procurement. But I've seen a little bit of everything when it comes to that.
Obviously, with you working all around the world, you must have got used to having to understand and learn new regulatory compliances everywhere you've gone. So how do you go about kind of, building kind of regulatory reflexes that, give the ability not just to react to new laws, but designed their supply chains and operations so they're, flexible enough to kind of absorb when that sudden change happens? How do you create something like that?
Yeah. So having those relationships with those local partners that are in your offices in those countries or regions that are the experts and being able to lean on them is critical when you're preparing for challenges that may come up or having to react to challenges. I think the biggest thing is that if you can absorb the impact rather than react to the impact, you're in a better space when it comes to the regulatory side of things. Regulatory is not going to disappear. It's in every geography and it's going to be anywhere. You do have a choice if you want to be in a certain geography or not. That's your choice as a company and part of your strategy and your brand, right? But I think it's important to look at it as it's going to be there. So how can we work with it? Let's not work against it. A couple examples that I would bring up going back in time, not too far back, but a little bit, are the situation in Russia or the Brexit. How many procurement teams were prepared for that and how many were having to react to that? So I think the key there is being as prepared as you can be. And what that looks like in my eyes is diversifying your shared service centers, diversifying and putting into multiple geographies, plan A's, B's, and C's, if something like that were to happen, so you're not dependent on physical geography all the time.
Another thing that you always have to manage is, consumers are smarter, they've got more knowledge, and, more often than not, they will vote with their wallets. You see examples around the world of particular boycotts going on because of relationships businesses have. So how in years in 2026 can a company use data privacy and ethical labor practices, which are so vital for making sure businesses are ethically functional, but how can they also use that to help flip the script and turn those kind of stringent regulatory processes into kind of marketing and branding superpowers that not only will bring in new customers but keep them around?
Yeah, so I think what I would call what you're referring to is really a proof of trust in brands today. And there are certainly brands that have had challenges along the way and companies that have had challenges along the way. I remember when I was procuring some palm kernel oil, and I was told, don't be this brand. And those things still stick with me because they've obviously made a sour taste in consumer mouths. And it's a lot easier to prevent that than it is to try to have to react to that. So my advice is to always partner with your marketing teams, even if as procurement, marketing is not always traditionally involved in your process or your project. Go and knock on the door of marketing, because you typically know a lot of people across the company because you are the one that connects the dots, and say, we're working on this. There's a stakeholder. I'm really excited about this project. What do you think about XYZ? Or do you anticipate there being any consumer challenges with using this or going in this direction? Bounce it off them and see what they say, because I'm sure they'll have input.
I imagine a lot of procurement professionals perhaps, agree with you. They are the kind of hub. They connect the functions of a business together, but perhaps don't have that scope where they're, talking to every facet of the business. How do you kind of recommend that procurement teams within their companies can help build those relationships? Is it like making sure you have scheduled time in the diary? What have you kind of done in your career?
Very good question. I think a lot of people see it as a challenge. One, they're not sure what to do or how to do it. And two, I've heard the excuse of, I don't have time for that, right? And I think, the I don't have time, we're all time limited. I get that. But I do believe that building that relationship will save you time in the future. And I do prioritize that. One of the things that I would say that has helped me as I've worked through different categories in my career and also advised other individuals of how to do this best is setting up little info sessions, nothing exhaustive. 15 to 20 minutes. Don't expect people to attend for an hour, and say, hey, come to this procurement info session. I want to share what we do and what's at our core. And if you have questions, I'll open up for questions. People love that. They actually love that because they're like, oh, there's this procurement thing. I don't know what it is. I'm not sure how it functions in our company, but I send an email and something happens and the PO is issued. Like, I don't know what's happening behind the scenes. And I'll dive into some of those things of how that works at a high level or who to go to for what in those intro meetings. And it's a webinar style, so it's very much generic in nature. And then there's open time for questions. And I leave a lot of time for questions because, believe it or not, there are a lot of questions that come in. And I've seen stakeholders respond very well to that. It's actually improved some of our ratings when I've done surveys and things like that for the perspective from our stakeholders of procurement. That has brought it really to the top because of some of those mini webinars that I've hosted. What is procurement? What do we do? How can we help you?
Is it also kind of having that open door policy? Like you said, we're all very time limited, but if you make yourself have that kind of window in, then you'll find that more than the times than not, people will come forward and want to have those discussions, want to talk to you, and you can drive that.
Absolutely. The open door policy is very, very, it's definitely critical to all of that. But I think people aren't even open, or stakeholders aren't always even open to coming to the open door policy because they don't always know maybe what to ask or how to approach or when to approach. So I think starting with the baseline of, hey, here's what procurement is, here's what we do in your organization, really gives a foundation for people then to come with questions generically and then come with specific questions later down the line with an open door policy.
And kind of looking ahead to the next kind of 5 to 10 years, do you think the kind of increasing regulations will eventually slow down the disruptors, or will it actually force the kind of next wave of even more brilliant, efficient technology?
So I believe that it will create innovation. It's going to continue to expedite innovation. Like I said, I don't see the regulatory world going away. It's not going to be like poof tomorrow it's gone away, or there's a certain geography where it doesn't exist. It's going to exist in some flavor, shape, or form in all places, especially where you may be operating businesses. So I do think that it's going to excel some of that. It's going to create extra challenges, and people are going to have to think very deeply about how to get around and come up with those solutions. But I do think that procurement can do it and the teams around procurement can do it.
Perfect. And Dennis, you're our second guest on the podcast. And what we like to do is give our speakers a chance to ask questions to one another. So before I give you your chance, I was wondering if you could help me with Dr. Manish Lunka's question he gave us on our last episode.
Sure.
He said, do we generally look at procurement as a business decision do we generally look at procurement as a business decision support function or as a simple support function? What do you think?
That's a good question. I think it varies significantly depending on the maturity of the business and the company and the setup of procurement and the setup of the teams. I've been in organizations where things below $250,000, and when I say things, I'm referring to contracts or POs, are handled by a shared service organization or sometimes even outsourced in some way, shape, or form. And in that sense, you can look at it in one perspective. And then I've been at places where everything down to a purchase for $500 is handled by the procurement function itself. So I think it really depends on the organization overall.
That's perfect. Well, thank you so much for answering that. And I want to give you the opportunity to ask our next guest a question. So go ahead.
All right. So in my thoughts here, I would say, overall in procurement, what do you see procurement looking like in 20 years?
I like it. I'm looking forward to seeing what they kind of think. I think a lot of times we spend here at these conferences, we're kind of looking ahead. Maybe I think people like to look ahead to a year, 2 years, or 20 years. I mean, it's going to be very interesting. Some big, bold predictions. They could be very right. Very wrong. But we'll
absolutely, yes.
And Dennis, before we let you go, I've got 3 final questions for you. These are quick fire, so I want you to kind of say first thing that comes to mind. Don't think about it,
Okay.
Get honest ones. So my first question is, what's the most exciting thing about the future of procurement?
Most exciting, all the tech that's coming between and around and in procurement.
What is one thing that people still get wrong about procurement?
That procurement is a legal department.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see it. Do you kind of find you have a lot of people come to you with those kind of questions and have to redirect them somewhere else?
I have before, yes, I have. And I'm always happy to answer contract questions to the best of my ability. I am not a lawyer, nor do I play one on TV, but we do get some questions that are very intricate.
And finally, what is one piece of technology we rely on now which will be obsolete in a year?
That's a very good question. I would say some of the automation that happens with smart home technology. And when I think of smart home technology, there has to be triggers today. And I think it will be more of a sense type of, path forward than actual triggers happening or physical things, or you flipping a button or a switch or things like that.
Right. Well, thank you, Dennis. Thank you so much for sparing some time for us this afternoon. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you so much.
And thank you so much for listening. That's all we've got time for today. And please tune in next week for the next episode of the Procurement Magazine podcast. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.